My friends, let me talk to you for a moment. You know, every time I meet someone who's learning English, I see this same expression, this mix of hope, panic, and regret, like they just signed up for a gym membership they know they won't use. And they tell me, Barack, I want to speak English fluently in 30 days, and I look at them and I say, well, look, that depends, because the truth is most people don't fail because English is hard. No, English isn't the problem. The method is. And the method they're using? It's broken, outdated. It's like trying to watch Netflix on a microwave. It's not going to work. So today I want to give you the real method. The one nobody told you. The one they should teach in schools, but they don't. Actually, if schools taught it, half the language teachers would be out of a job. And I say that with love. Now, let me be honest with you. You're not going to magically wake up fluent by sleeping with a dictionary under your pillow. You know? If that worked, my dog would be a Harvard graduate. So what does work? That's what we're talking about today. But before I tell you the secret, and trust me, it is a secret, let me just say this. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Look, it's simple. You click a button, and suddenly you're part of a community that helps you speak English like naturals, like real people, not like a robot reading from a user manual. And, if you can subscribe to 17 cooking channels you never use, you can subscribe here too. It'll help you, I promise. All right, now let's get into it. So, the first problem with how people learn English is that they treat it like homework. And you know, homework has a very specific energy. It's the energy of, I don't want to do this, but if I don't, my life will collapse. That's not how you learn a language. That's how you survive school. You want to speak fluently? You got to make English something you live, not something you study. Let me explain. When I was learning how to communicate on the world stage, meeting different cultures, different accents, different ways of speaking, I realized something important. Fluency is not about knowing every word. It's about being comfortable with the words you do know. Actually, that's the whole game. Because when you're comfortable, your brain relaxes. And when your brain relaxes, you speak better. A lot better. If you've ever had that moment where you suddenly spoke perfect English at 2 a.m. after watching a movie, that's not magic. That's a relaxed brain. That's fluency. So what's the method? Look, it's incredibly simple. You speak English every day, not for hours, but in the right way. You talk to yourself. You narrate your day. You pretend you're giving a TED Talk while making eggs. You perform a press conference in front of your dog. You tell your shampoo bottle about your hopes and dreams. I'm not joking, you know? It sounds silly. But so does half of TikTok, and that doesn't stop anybody. The point is, your brain needs to hear your own voice in English. Once your brain accepts that voice as normal, fluency starts happening automatically. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Barack, this feels weird. And I get it. It is weird. But so was the first time you tried to ride a bike. So was the first time you danced. So was the first time you tried avocado toast. And look at you now, riding, dancing, and eating overpriced green butter on bread. Growth requires awkwardness. Fluency requires awkwardness. You cannot skip the awkward phase. You can only move through it faster. And this is where the 30-day method gets real. Every day, you pick a theme, any theme, and you talk about it for 3 to 5 minutes. Day 1, talk about your breakfast. Day 2, talk about your job. Day 3, talk about that neighbor who mows the lawn at 6 a.m. Day 4, talk about why you still haven't gone to the gym, even though you will start Monday. Day 5, talk about how you keep telling yourself you'll start on Monday again. Be honest, we've all been there. And the magic here is repetition. Because every time you talk, even if it's nonsense, your brain gets more comfortable using English without translating. Look, that's the biggest enemy of fluency, translation. Translation is like that one friend who always shows up when nobody invited them. They mean well, but they ruin everything. You're trying to speak English, and your brain is like, wait, let me translate this real quick. Hold on. I need the perfect word. Let me check the grammar. Oh no, we messed up. Shut everything down. This is why you freeze. This is why your sentences come out like poorly assembled IKEA furniture. This is why you sound better in your head than in real life. If you want fluency in 30 days, you must stop translating. You know, the brain can't think in two languages at the same time. It chooses one, and it keeps choosing your native language. English will always feel slow. So what's the fix? You flood your brain with English all day, small amounts, but constantly. You complain in English. You hype yourself up in English. You argue with imaginary people in English, especially those arguments where you win. Those are important. And yes, you do this out loud because your mouth needs practice too. Fluency is a physical skill. If you never move your mouth in English, how can you expect the words to come out when you need them? Look, if someone asked you to run a marathon without training your legs, you'd call them crazy. But people expect to speak fluently without training their mouth. That's the same level of crazy. Now, let me tell you something else. Actually, it's one of the most important pieces of this whole method. Fluency doesn't come from speaking fast. It comes from speaking without fear. If you're scared of making mistakes, you will never speak naturally. But if you embrace mistakes, if you celebrate them, then suddenly English becomes fun. And fun things, you'll learn them faster. When I speak to people learning English, they often whisper, like English is a secret, like someone will arrest them if they mispronounce comfortable. Speak like Obama giving a State of the Union for one person, yourself. Be gloriously, proudly, beautifully wrong, because every mistake is evidence that you're trying. And trying is how you become fluent. Now look, we've talked about thinking in English, speaking in English, daily themes, confidence, but there's one more thing that separates the successful learners from those who quit. Consistency. You can't do this for 2 days and say, I don't see results yet. Of course you don't see results. If you go to the gym twice and expect abs, you belong in a motivational poster, not reality. But if you do this for 30 days, really do it, something incredible happens. One morning, you wake up and you think your first thought in English. Not because you forced it, but because your brain finally realized English is now a normal part of your life. That moment is magical, and that moment changes everything. You speak smoother. Your confidence rises. Your fear melts. Your sentences connect. Your vocabulary grows naturally, and suddenly you feel like a different person. Actually, you are a different person. You're someone who speaks English without fear, without translating, without sounding like a 1992 language cassette tape. Look, this 30-day method works. I've seen it. People who struggled for years suddenly transform, all because they finally learned the right way. And if you want to keep growing with the right method, the one that actually works, then don't forget, we're building something special here at EazyEnglishVibe, a place where anyone, no matter their level, can learn English the way real people speak it. So, talk every day. Think in English. Be brave. Be loud. Be wrong. And trust the process. You can speak fluently. You can do it in 30 days. And you don't have to struggle alone. Welcome to the new you.